The Future History of Energy and Transportation. Documenting the paradigm shift from the era of oil and internal combustion to the era of robotics. By Julian Cox. Narrated by the author with the aid of an artificial intelligence. Chapter 12. Infrastructure level energy efficiency explored. Suffice to say, that having allocated societal level energy efficiency of transportation to the fungible energy resources of society to deliver fuel to a pump, or electricity to an outlet, there is a balance remaining in terms of energy, plus materials and labor, expended on constructing fixed assets and vehicle fleets, required to perform those functions. Such as an oil platform, a grid utility, a solar array, distribution apparatus, be that ships, trains, pipelines or grid infrastructure. Also the factories to produce the vehicles, the mines, the factories and the processes of supply chain precursors, and of course the energy required to build vehicles themselves. A detailed analysis of infrastructure level efficiency is beyond the scope of this work for the following reasons. The complexity is bewildering to the point that any attempt at generalization will not only lack satisfactory data but be unsatisfying even so. The situation is sufficiently dynamic that even if successful, any snapshot will date the usefulness of this work, and in fact the key take-home message of this work is to point out just how dynamic the situation is. The predicted imminence, speed and scope of industrial disruption is wildly beyond consensus forecasts. See chapter, The Future History of Energy and Transportation. Just as the fossil fuel and internal combustion industries have recursively powered themselves, producing the fuel to power its own furnaces, ships, trains and trucks, the renewables and electrification industry is set to do likewise, powering factories with on-site solar and storage of its own manufacture, and similarly, powering vehicle fleets and car transporters and onwards to battery precursor and mining operations. In order to keep the subject matter useful and comprehensible, we will shunt the bulk of the issue to the mass of processed mine products, materials level efficiency, such as the curb weight of a finished vehicle or a quantity of refined fuel. To the extent the production of infrastructure and vehicles to deliver passenger mileage isn't moot, in proportion to the mass of products produced, we could look at things like the bulk of an oil pipeline, or a tanker truck, versus the thinness of a high-voltage transmission line. Conversely, we could look at the high percentage utility of crude oil versus the relatively low percentage of metals recoverable from ores and brines for battery precursors. Within reason these probably offset one another. Regardless of where we are now, the most significant feature of infrastructure level efficiency, whether incorporated in an energy equation or more broadly in a cost equation, is an extremely rapid dynamic of cost reduction in the case of ambient energy capture and storage, relative to mine and burn infrastructure, and even more significantly, the emergence of opportunities to capitalize ambient energy capture and storage, and to recursively fold back energy generation into the production of generative assets, meaning the solar panel factory, powered by its own panels. There are also novel zero marginal cost opportunities to incorporate energy capture and storage in other valuable structures and devices, such as roofs that power houses, and of course cars containing the battery storage capacity, required to load balance variable renewable electricity production on the grid, thus deduplicating the cost of roofing and grid storage respectively. Zero marginal cost is effectively impossible to compete with at a profit, by anything that costs money, so long as customers, in the ordinary sense and in the broadest sense to include businesses and governments, are willing to allocate capital to assets over consumption, which generally they are, especially when the cost of financing a productive asset undercuts a familiar and ongoing cost of consumption.